At this time, what you would do is you would go through 3 levels of schooling. Every Jewish boy would go through 3 levels of schooling. The goal was to be a disciple of a rabbi. That's what every little boy wanted to be. The rabbis were the ones that everybody looked up to. And so this is what they desired and wanted. And so they would go through these 3 levels of school to get to that point. Really quickly, the 3 levels are this. The first level is that when you were 5 years old to 10 years old, you would begin to memorize the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. All right, so if you're 5 to 10 in here, be very, very grateful for your 25-word vocabulary list that all starts with B. All right? Like they had to memorize the first 5 books. The second level then was ages 11 to 14. They would proceed to memorize the rest of the Old Testament. Okay, and then they would practice modes of answer and conversations to show their wisdom. And what they would do is they would begin to learn how to answer questions with a question. And so the rabbi might say, what is 2 plus 2, for example? Now, in our culture, we think the smartest guy is the one who stands up first and yells the loudest, right? So what is 2 plus 2? 4! And then we look around and we're like, yeah, I nailed it. And everybody's looking at me like, man, his calculator brain is way faster than mine, man. He's smart. But for them, this isn't what they would do. The rabbi would say, what's 2 plus 2? And one of the disciples would have to respond with something like, what is the square root of 16? And he's demonstrating that I'm not only understanding your question and the answer, but I'm wise enough to rephrase the answer with another question. We see Jesus do this in Luke chapter 2. Jesus is about this age and he's in the synagogue talking to the rabbis. He's answering their questions with questions and they're astonished at his wisdom. This is why this kind of thing happens all throughout Scripture. And then level 3, you begin to write your own commentary. This happens after you're about 15 years old. And then you would get your resume together. You would go up to a rabbi and you would have to go to him. The rabbi doesn't come to you. You would have to go up to him and you would nervously kind of look at him and you would kind of show him your work and then he would kind of grill you and then he would decide for any good reason or any bad reason whether or not he wanted you to be his disciple or not. He could simply just say, no, I don't want you, even if you're good enough. So you're spending your entire life striving and living and dreaming about being a rabbi's disciple and eventually one day maybe being a rabbi, but he can simply just squash your dream just like that, even if you feel like you've achieved it. This is the way it worked. And if a rabbi accepted you, you were committing to be all over this guy. Okay, you're like a toupee on Donald Trump. Like it's not him, you know that, but for some reason it's always there, like appears to be a part of him. And so this is what you were if you were a disciple. What you were committing to is I will go where you go. I will say what you say. I will do what you do. You're simply becoming that person. And when that person passes on, you carry on their life. You're becoming their identity. You're carrying on who they are. That's what it meant to be a disciple. Does that sound familiar to anything? That's what the call of a disciple is. And this is why it's important for us to know how to live in the grace that's given in our identity, because outside of the identity of Christ, we cannot be the disciple that we've been called to be. But if the rabbi says no, then you simply go about the family business. And so Simon, Peter, James, and John aren't necessarily incompetent, but more than likely they've been rejected. They've put their best foot forward, but it wasn't good enough. And so now they're fishermen. So this is the way that the world works, is it not? We strive to do everything we can. We think that there's a dream or goal that we need to achieve to have satisfaction and joy. And then we may or may not get it. But even those who get it, they need some other dream and goal to try to achieve over because we find out that everything in the world is in vain. Everything that we accomplish, it doesn't give us satisfaction. It doesn't bring us joy. This is how the world goes. This is just a demonstration of religion. This is the way that the world works. But then take a look at what King Jesus does. It says he goes to the men. That's not what rabbis do. He comes to them. We sang about this earlier. He came to them. They didn't have to go to him. They didn't have to nervously put their resume together and strive their entire lives to do everything that he wanted them to do and then go ask King Jesus, hey, can we be your disciple, and wait to hear an answer? He came to them. He says then, follow me. So they didn't have to nervously ask and wait for an answer. And at this point in their life, they're not even looking for an invitation. They're not working for an invitation. They're not thinking to themselves, if I just do everything that I possibly can as being a good fisherman, then maybe I'll get another chance, because no rabbi is going to come to a fisherman and say, follow me. First of all, they don't go to you. And second of all, they don't ask you. You have to ask them. They've already failed. So Jesus, the rabbi, comes to the ones who aren't good enough. And he says, follow me.